What happened to the FNaF community? Over the years, the FNaF community has grown more and more toxic, complaining about the story, hating on each other unnecessarily, even complaining about Scott Cawthon himself. What happened? The story of FNaF has greatly evolved over time. Scott made FNaF 1 as his last attempt at a game, but after the game grew successful, he carried on with it. The story wasn't fully written for the first game, but it's clear that he had some ideas in his mind that were left open-ended. He most likely already had the idea that we, as the player, were the son of the murderer of 5 children years ago. As the series progressed, though, the story grew larger and larger, extending out to books of many different types. However, many people in the community have an issue with the story and how it's too complicated. I can understand not liking the story, but if you dislike it, why pay attention to it? But that's not the real issue. The issue comes from the theorists themselves and how they treat each other. I myself am a theorist, but one thing I try to avoid at all costs is debating. Theorists, especially in the more recent years of the franchise, have grown toxic, and way too many people take disagreements too personally. I made an entire video on the issues with FNaF theorizing nowadays, but the issue extends out to the whole of the community, as many FNaF fans are theorists as well. It's annoying when people dislike a person solely based on the theories they believe. It's really stupid because it's just a theory about a video game. An idea you create or believe doesn't reflect on your entire intelligence, as it's just a theory. However, some theories are also essentially facts. Even though Scott hasn't blatantly said them himself, these are his games and books, so if something is confirmed through them, they are confirmed by Scott. Despite this, some people just choose to ignore. Theorizing is a really slippery slope, and it's hard to actually realize when you've gone too far with it. It's important to remember that we're just creating ideas to try and solve the story of a video game, and treating people a certain way just because of what they believe about the story is a completely unfair and frankly stupid thing to do. It's really just an issue with some members of the community, some of which take it even further. Some drama has sparked in the past because of people in the FNaF community. Most of the actual legitimate drama in the community has nothing to do with theories, but merely just because some of the people in the community are just bad people or have done bad things. In 2020, Scott announced the FNaF Fanverse initiative. At the time, it was a really cool thing to find out because Scott was actually giving credit to the developers of some fan games where that credit was due. However, some of these fan game developers have fallen into some controversial situations. Nixon ended up getting caught saying some transphobic stuff, and when people asked if he apologized, he simply said, "sure," seeming to imply he wasn't very regretful. Jonachrome dated a 13-year-old when he was 21, and while he did seemingly sincerely apologize many times even before people found out about it, he has been seeking therapy as well, but he still did it, and he can't change that. And Kane Carter got into some drama with f***ing Theft King. Okay, can we seriously just talk about Theft King for a second? Now, I'm not gonna get into his content. I think for the most part it's fine with some clickbait here and there, but besides that, his content isn't really anything horrible. However, he basically threw a fit because someone didn't reply to his DMs. It's important to remember that Theft King is in his 30s, and he's basically what you'd call a man-child. King Carter has mostly been seen in the right for this drama, but the entire thing really just shows how much the community has fallen over the years. Some people have even gotten mad at Scott for this. People tried to cancel Scott around mid-2021 because of donations he made to some politicians, some of which weren't entirely supportive of people from the LGBTQ+ community. In response to this drama, Scott retired from FNaF. While he does still have a say in what goes on, like the story in the movie, he's mostly taken a backseat role from the franchise and likely won't be making any more games for the franchise in the future. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about this, as it's 100% your decision how you should feel about it, but no matter whether you support Scott or not, none of you, or at least none of you who are sane, can tell me that it's not f***ed up that people sent Scott and his family death threats for what happened. Scott was literally living in fear of his life and the lives of his family, including his pregnant wife and his 5 children. This is completely unacceptable, and it's a massive issue that anyone in this community would ever even think of doing something like that. But not only did all of this happen, some people even got mad at Scott for not doing anything about the fanverse drama. It's not his fault in the slightest though, and I don't really get what the issue is, as Scott has a backseat role now. The fanverse developers brought this upon themselves, and blaming Scott for it is really stupid. While there are more issues with the FNaF community than just what I've discussed in this video, by far the biggest issue comes from the most recent FNaF game, Security Breach. I wanted to ensure that this video came out today because it's actually the 1-year anniversary of the release of Security Breach today. I wanted this video to come out for the Security Breach anniversary because Security Breach is one of the bigger reasons for the downward spiral of the FNaF community. Security Breach had a bit of a rocky start, many people hating on the game, resulting in it being one of the lowest rated FNaF games ever. Many people criticized the title for being far too ambitious and having too many bugs and so much scrapped content. People also criticized the story, claiming it to be kinda bland, too confusing, and even saying that it ruins the old lore. This isn't a problem in and of itself, the problem in reality stems from how people have said that this game single-handedly ruined FNaF. But that makes no sense. Love or hate Security Breach, it was the most successful FNaF game even though it was the lowest rated, and Security Breach was a shot at trying something new with the franchise. It's completely different from the other FNaF games, and therefore there's really no way that it could have ruined the series by itself, because it is a single game and it is an intentionally unique one. If more games were to come out like Security Breach in the future, and people were to dislike those as well, then people would have the right to say that the franchise is ruined by that point. But just giving that statement and only basing it off of Security Breach alone is pretty absurd. In the end, I'll always be a fan of FNaF, even if it does things in the future that I don't like. I'll always be a part of this community as a fan and a theorist, but I don't understand how so many other members of this community have fallen so far. If the franchise is to be ruined, it won't be by Security Breach or anything to do with the games or the books themselves. If the franchise is to be ruined, it will be by the community.